This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. For this episode of the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast, we are in North County, San Diego. And joining me is Blake Masoner of Craft Coast. Welcome back to the podcast, Blake.
Thank you for having me. Stoked to be here.
Last time, we did this once before, but it was a panel podcast on IPA malt, and Blake shared his thoughts on using that. But we haven't gotten the full Craft Coast story. And those subscribers to our Brewing Industry Guide or our Industry All Access subscribers will soon see our cover story that Joe Stang wrote on Craft Coast. And since I was going to be down here in San Diego, I figured, I should make the trek up here to have some tacos, maybe have some beer, definitely have some tacos. And if I'm coming all the way up here, maybe we should also record a podcast and get the full Craft Coast story while we're here. So I'm excited to do that today. Of course, Craft Coast over the last 4 years has won 8 World Beer Cup and GABF medals, 2 GABF, 6 World Beer Cup medals. Kind of a crazy run for a new brewery and a super impressive one. You've won every year that you've entered so far. Knock on wood. We're not going to jinx it this time. Just going to say you guys have been crushing it consistently in the competitive space and doing it across a whole bunch of different styles. Everything from, golden international style pilsner for Chilsner. At GABF, you've won for English style brown ale. You've won for Australian pale ale. You've won for American IPA, juicy hazy, lagers and ale styles, hoppy styles, traditional styles. Seems like there's very little that you can't brew well. We're going to just kind of spread and talk about a lot of different beer styles today and how Craft Coast makes them so well. Before we do that, if you're looking for a brewery chiller that's worry-free and tough on GWP, then look no further. G&D Chiller's Elite 290 Series chiller uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low global warming potential. This natural, highly efficient refrigerant with near zero GWP will help lower your facility's energy costs and impact on the environment. They are committed to a greener, more efficient future. Visit gdchillers.com to learn more. And brewers, what if your yeast could do more than just ferment? With Berkeley Yeast, it can. They bioengineer ordinary strains and make them extraordinary, enhancing the flavors you want and eliminating the ones you don't. Now, in addition to competitive pricing, they're offering free overnight shipping on 5+ barrel pitches. Try it out. If you don't love it, they'll happily refund you. So why settle for ordinary when you can brew with better yeast? Visit berkeleyyeast.com to learn more and start brewing with science on your side. Also, as breweries expand beyond beer into other segments like mocktails and CBD beverages, Old Orchard is here to help. They can formulate custom blends featuring specialty ingredients. Whether trending flavor additions or nostalgic favorites, the next best thing is around the corner at Old Orchard. More information and free samples are waiting at oldorchard.com/brewer. That's oldorchard.com/brewer. All right, Blake, give me the story. Give me your personal story through beer and then that origin story for Craft Coast.
All right. Here we go. I guess it all started
with a Mr. Beer kit.
Maybe Mr. Beer. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it definitely started like most of us did with the home brewing background. And beyond that, hopefully my parents don't listen to this, but we were drinking beer before we were 21 years old, and being in North County, San Diego, lots of access to brand new breweries that were popping up. Stone at the time was just a powerhouse. And living in Vista, California, breweries were popping up, it seemed like every single day. And we thought it was super rad to be able to go sit and drink beer that was made right in our neighborhood.
Right.
And that kind of got the creative juices flowing. At first, it was just fun, something to do any day of the week. And then it turned into the homebrew thing, and we had several homebrew shops that were influential on a lot of breweries in this area, and including myself. And I got that homebrew kit for my birthday and then took off with it, and I loved it I think it really...
Your parents sent you down this road.
My parents are responsible for my beer journey, and I'm responsible from hiding it from them before they sent me on that journey. So I think...
It almost feels like they knew, but...
You know what? I was actually... I was the one that never got in trouble. I was the good kid, did well in school, stayed out of trouble, but I think I was able to fly under the radar a bit because of that. But yeah, we were drinking all kinds of beers growing up. Newcastle's obviously all the macro lagers, Stone, Arrogant Bastard, ton of Sierra Nevada. We drank probably more Torpedo at that time than we did Sierra Nevada Pale. And
you
that
just wanted more ABV and more hops.
Well, it was a trip. Like that's just what, like, all of a sudden those beers hit your palate and you think they're so crazy bitter and, obnoxious, but you can't get enough of it type thing. So that led into the love of beer. And then once I turned 21, I just took off with it. I tried to go anywhere I could that could get a fresh beer, was super into the home brewing thing. My sister got married and I made Honey Blonde, a whole bunch of bombers for the for like giveaways to all the attendees, and they all loved it. And so they kind of pushed me towards like, hey, maybe you should take a look at doing this. And I think after I stopped playing football and playing sports in college, I needed something and went around, applied at a couple different places, ultimately landing at Pizza Port as a bar back and a food prepper and a pizza maker. Basically anything.
Just get your foot in the door.
Get the foot in the door.
Yeah.
And I even, in my very first time sitting down with the GM there, I was like, hey, I want to work in the brewery. And they're like, well, it doesn't really work like that here. You have to kind of
pay your dues.
And another part of that is you learn the dynamic of the company that you're going to be working for.
Right.
And you see like, hey, these brewers are having a really good time. You see them hanging out at the bar after while I'm a bar back, and they're talking shop, and I'm a home brewer, so I'm not really going to get involved. And I eventually brought in some beer, gave it to one of the guys, and, he drank it. He said it wasn't, him and the bar manager drank it. They liked it. And eventually when he moved on and got a head brewing job at one of the pubs, everybody in the brewery back there was only other guys. They all slid up and they hired me in as the keg washer, So I think I was so stoked, like at that time, like I'm working in a brewery and I have a full-time job. I'm getting paid more per hour than I ever have. And I think it was like, I don't know, maybe $11 or so.
Yeah.
And I was still working at my family friend's Italian restaurant as a server. So I was making tips. And,
right.
And then in the mornings, I would be at Pizza Port washing kegs and putting together distro orders and scrubbing and
hustling, man.
Yeah. And I loved it, and we were growing so fast every year. We would grow by thousands of barrels.
Right.
And the guys were, there was a tough crew back there for sure. And they're all very successful brewers to this day. A couple of the guys are still running Pizza Port brew pubs. My original boss is still the director of brewing ops at Pizza Port. And,
Pizza Port as a group has kind of also trained a whole bunch of killer, amazing medal-winning brewers, who continue with their own breweries, absolutely crushing it. So it was quite the excellence factory.
The family tree is massive, and if you look at where everybody is today and the successes that everyone has, whether they're still internal or they've gone on to do their own thing, it's really impressive. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I still have a great relationship with that whole team. Vince and Gina support my business, and they supported my exit. So all the guys, are still crushing it, and I'm very thankful that that's the company that I got to go with. I'm thankful that the places that I also applied at before that didn't hire me, because my whole story could have been different,
Right.
And so, yeah, after a couple years working at Pizza Port, you know, juices started flowing. I got like super gnarly injured in a dirt bike crash, and I couldn't work for months. And at that time I was just chilling at home, and me and my roommate were like, all right, you know, let's write a business plan here and let's see what we could do with it. And Craft Coast was born out of that. And when I went back to work, they brought me right back in. I got a promotion shortly thereafter, and just put my head down, and I was like, I'm going to wait on this Craft Coast thing until I'm fully confident in my abilities to write recipes, service equipment, manage inventory. Like, I wanted to be well versed in all of it. And I got promoted to head brewer of the Bressy Ranch facility. We were making a shitload of beer, huge team, and it really got some good management insight. It got good production insight, technical quality control. We were canning at an insane rate. So learned really quick. And I think, you know, from the time I started as a keg washer till I became head brewer was like 4 years. And I was stoked on the
like the best college education.
It was,
brewing
yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
It's Pizza Port is the University of Brewing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, well, maybe Stone or Ballast Point were close, but
Right.
you know,
graduate program in brewing.
Right. And I eventually got to this point where we were sitting on this business plan, and beer and tacos were not yet a concept. There's places that exist that sold both, but nobody made both. So we decided we're done waiting.
And of course, Pizza Port is the beer and pizza model. But here you are in San Diego County, and like, you know, beer and tacos seems like kind of like a no-brainer. Now it seems like a no-brainer.
For sure. And we were like, all right, the opportunity is now. If we don't act on this, someone else is going to do it, and then we won't have the originality, you know?
Right.
Pizza Port had the beer and the pizza thing on full lock. Other places were doing beer and burgers, or like a brew pub with a mix of kind of American fare, whatever. Sure. We were like, let's be the authentic handmade tortilla Mexican taco shop that also brews their own beer. And so we launched it. I gave my notice at Pizza Port in 2019, and they were accepting of it, you know. And then we started building, and I would say a week later, COVID shut the world down. And we were like, we had no money. We were on the hook. We had some investors. We needed to make moves. Construction was considered essential, so we were able to continue on our path of building out a brew pub in downtown Oceanside. After they lifted some of the early COVID restrictions, we opened our doors on Labor Day weekend and just put our head down and went to work.
In 2020?
In 2020, yeah.
So yeah, five years, you know, this month.
Yeah. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, which was super rad. Good turnout, friends, family, brewers, fellow industry, our patrons. It was a really fun day.
So now you've got 2 locations, because you're also here in San Marcos, where we are right now. You're under construction on a 3rd location now, and you know, things continue to grow. Let's talk about some of the beers that underpin that. Since this is not a taco making podcast, we won't talk about you know,
we don't want to talk about masa and
oh man, you know, I have had great conversations about corn lately. Oaxacan heritage corn. Everyone who wants to talk about that, we'll go listen to the podcast with Ben Clayton of Tess. Some phenomenal stuff out there. But in this, we're not going to talk about nixtamalizing corn on this episode. Although we may, like I said, we may have to grab some tacos later on here as we finish up the episode. We'll cross that bridge. but it feels like tacos and beer make some sense as we do this. But I want to talk about some of your approach to award-winning beer, because obviously whether it's ales or lagers, you guys are killing it in that, but also like not making a big deal out of it. It's like one of those, like, you still lead with the tacos, and you're pulling a lot of people into craft beer via excellent food. And I think that's such a great kind of brand positioning. Let's talk about those beers that you make. But first, Indie Hops brings Oregon's natural wonder to brewers, celebrating 16 years of delivering compelling new hop varieties, along with classics that thrive in Oregon's terroir. Indie is the original source for Strata, Luminosa, Lorien, Meridian, and their newest variety, Audacia. Release your creativity with the magic of pure, uncut Oregon hops from Indie. Indie Hops, life is short. Let's make it flavorful. And Extra Tough has been making rugged and reliable boots for 75 years, built for the harshest conditions. The Legacy Collection styles are oil, acid, and chemical resistant with a non-slip rated outsole. Be prepared for whatever comes your way and shop the latest Extra Tough boots on extratough.com. That's XTRATUF.com. Also, brewers, have you ever considered brewing with North America's only ancient grain, wild rice? Craft brewers in northern Minnesota have been keeping this a secret for years. Joe at Canoe Wild Rice has a stockpile of this unique roasted grain ready to ship to you. From the waters of Minnesota to your tap room anywhere in the country, you're sure to create an in-demand product. Brewers Blend Wild Rice is the perfect size and texture, so it can be added directly into your mash, saving you time in the brewing process. Plus, for over 4 generations, Canoe Wild Rice has been using their time-tested process that gives wild rice a distinct roasted flavor. Who knows what sensation you could create with this aquatic grain. Canoe Wild Rice also has food-grade hulls available for your mash. Harvest season is underway in Minnesota now, but Joe will make time for you. If you have any questions or want to get an order going, send Canoe Wild Rice an email at joe@canoewildrice.com or give the office a call at 1-800-626-3809. All right, Blake. So you guys kick up Craft Coast and you write a business plan for it, and as I know, because I have been recently reading the story that Joe Stang wrote about you all and Bringing the Street Guide, you started out with this idea that you're not going to brew the same beer twice. So that's in your business plan, and that's what you're thinking. Obviously, you didn't win a few medals, and like now you got to keep making some of those beers. Some of the beer program has changed. Talk about some of that evolution, and talk about some of the kind of driving principles behind the beer that you guys make.
Yeah, I mean, the original concept, like you said, was we're not brewing the same beer twice. I had just spent the last 6 years of my career brewing 5 beers every day, over and over. And while that was great for learning, I was ready to put a stamp on, every time you come into Craft Coast, you're getting something new, something different, a new name, a new concept.
Of course, all of us who watch The Bear know how that story arc, develops, and the kind of pressure and stress, and and then also that becomes a very brewer-driven strategy, and eventually you need to pivot to a customer-focused strategy around that.
For sure. And so when we opened our doors for the first time, we had 3 beers of our own. We just needed to get open, so all we could achieve was 3 beers, and then we had the rest of the tap list with guest beer. Oceanside is a brew pub, so we have guest beer, wine, all that kind of stuff. And we ran out of the Mexican lager. That was the first beer that I brewed for Craft Coast, first beer to run out. And with my concept of we're never brewing the same beer twice, it wasn't in the tank ready to go. And I was probably buying 5 or 6 Mexican lager kegs a week, and from other breweries. And one of them was one of my best friend's breweries, Artifacts, and we were buying Johnny's Mexican lager 5 kegs a week. And I was like, all right, we need our Mexican lager back. This just is not. The writing is on the wall.
Shocker that people want a Mexican lager with their tacos.
Yeah, so Agua Baja became the very first Craft Coast core beer. And the whole goal was all right, we're going to have one. That'll be it. And kind of as we developed and kept brewing, our customers were talking to us, and they were determining what these beers were going to be over time. And the hazy Shoots Mahalo, it's our number 2 seller still to this day. And so
hazy IPA here in Southern California.
Oh, it's not going anywhere. Yeah. As much as everybody wants to say that we're West Coast IPA factories out here, hazy IPA is super, super important. And if you're looking at it from both the brewer and the business perspective, you got to do what's best for your company. So hazy IPA is number 2. And then, I was brewing a bunch of different West Coast IPAs, different hop combos, different yeast, just trying to see what was going to hit. And so, obviously a couple of the awards helped. Our Dark Mexican Lager won at the same competition at World Beer Cup as the hazy. And so those beers all of a sudden became
Dark Lager and Hazy IPA, both medaling in 2022.
That was pretty rad. That was in Minneapolis. And I was like, I had never had that happen before. Like we won my last year at Pizza Port, we won a gold for Chronic at GABF, which was sick for our company. Like that was a celebration of everybody in the company. So I had been on stage once. I knew what that felt like, but then to do it for yourself with 2, and that at that time, Oscura won in International Pilsner. It wasn't a dark lager category yet. And I thought that was super rad because that was a competitive entry at that time.
Yeah, International Pilsner or International Lager. So it was competing against, across that whole spectrum.
Yeah, and one of the notes I remember coming back was only dark beer in the flight. And I was like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? And I brewed that beer for me. I'm a Negro Modelo fan. We already had the, pale Mexican lager. I wanted to see how I could interpret dark Mexican lager. And then it won. And so, kind of our core developed off of just beers that won or beers that the customers wanted to drink the most. And I would look at our sales and be able to track each of these beers independently. And it's like, all right, well, it's consistent data showing that those beers should always be on tap. And so now I've let go of the idea of brewing a different beer every single day. We still do. I mean, we have one-offs on tap all the time. And I love that. New hop varietals come up, new hop products, new yeast, new malt. We're going to brew with it and see what it goes. And that's how some of our beers have actually been developed that are brewed all the time. Our first go around with HBC 586, brewed a West Coast IPA. We featured that hop. We really liked it, put it into World Beer Cup, and it won in American IPA. And so and we're like, okay, well, that's our 586 beer now. So we're good there. We already had 100% Mosaic West Coast IPA that's always on tap. Now we're like, all right, cool. We have a Crush Strata Simcoe beer that we really like. And then, just Pilsner kind of came around with the idea of I worked at that mom and pop Italian restaurant and we drank a ton of Peroni. Like, love Peroni. Every time I go in there, I get a hearty, hefty Italian food, just super, super fun and intense flavor. And then you just crush Peroni with it. And I'm like, all right, I want to envision what my take on Peroni would be. And so brewed this beer called Pilsner, and same thing as Old West. Really liked it, submitted it to competition, and it won. And then submitted it again out of San Marcos, whole new brew house, the same year, and then it won gold. And so we're like, okay, we might be onto something here with this Italian Pilsner, so let's let's keep that one around all the time now.
So now you got a whole bunch of core beers.
Yeah,
here.
now we have a whole bunch of core beers, and the whole concept off the start was, fuck core beer. We don't like doing that because I'm tired of it.
Careful what you win for, because people are going to want more of that from you.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, some of it doesn't. Sometimes winning doesn't matter,
right?
Except intrinsically, you know, like you have that. It's for the team. You're stoked. Like when I won for the Brewery Brown Ale, I was the only brewer for Craft Coast. Like that was just. I felt like we needed something malty on the board, and it was around fall, approaching fall. Can't have that beer on in summer, but approaching fall, like, hey, we could have a brown ale and it might, it might do good. And then it won a bronze.
And still didn't sell.
No, and it still sits around, which is fine, but it's our dark option for that time. Sure. And then, other beers, just have ended up just working out. And so I'm really like glad that we abandoned our original ideology and approach to our beer list,
right?
And just let the customers fully determine what beers we're gonna brew. And we still get crazy, and we brew some stuff that sucks. And I try and do crazy shit that doesn't work out. Tried to do like a crazy sour, like kettle sour that had spirulina and pineapple and coconut, and it was awful. Like awful.
Sure.
Just terrible. Brewed some West Coast IPAs that trying to be a little too cute with it, and they just don't work. And so I think the other guys, Will and Adam, we've all kind of found what we like.
Sure.
And we can expand outside of that parameter when needed, but we could really get into the pocket now, and our drinkers are really like they're intrigued by that. So
sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dark Mexican style lager. Because you obviously have approach for that, and being here in San Diego, just north of the border with Tijuana, like there's certainly a lot of cultural, cross-cultural integration there. From that perspective, what was it about Negro Modelo that you loved, and how did you go about then thinking about what a Craft Coast approach to dark Mexican style lager was going to be?
I love doing research and finding out why certain ingredients matter, what the influence is on the beer. And so with the case of Oscura, you have this beer that you're mimicking, Negro Modelo. It's a German beer, but it's also a stem off of Modelo. One of my favorite things, and something that a lot of craft brewers might not agree with, but I think macro breweries are the most important breweries in the world for consistency and technicality. The beers are timeless for a reason. So when I take an approach to a recipe, I'm like, how can I make this beer over and over and over and over again that tastes exactly the same using really high quality ingredients? So that's the difference. So Oscura is literally just 100% Weyermann malt with some flake corn and German hops and
pills,
Pilsner, extra pale premium pills, and it's Agua Baja with a few added specialty malts. Same hops, same hopping schedule, same yeast, same fermentation schedule, and you get this pale beer, and then you get this dark beer that are so different, but they're so the same. And every time I brew it, I want to hit those numbers dead on, because I idolize the fact that brewers can do that. And I was doing that in a massive craft brewery. And so I always take the approach more of a macro brewer. I'm kind of like envious of that, where it's like, hey, you get these consistent results all the time. And if I do my job as a craft brewer, I should be able to also achieve consistent results every time. And luckily, that beer was brewed strictly because I love that style, and it caught on. And the brewers who come here expect that beer to be on. They drink it. They've really made an attachment to that beer. Lime or no lime, again, it's like it's a good beer, and all it is a couple different ingredients of our already most popular beer. So it just makes sense. And it works so well with the food. Just that maltiness and the richness, a little bit higher terminal gravity just helps cut through some of that acidity, some of the fats, you know, it all completes this big circle.
Let's talk about some of the process of that. So you basically are building off the same recipe as your pale Mexican lager, but obviously you're taking some diversions. So it has a slightly higher finishing gravity on that. So let's talk about the kind of mash process on that, because also now that you're adding color with some malt, but you're really not trying to get the flavor from that dark malt. Talk to me about how you achieve that kind of color goal while keeping the flavor impact pretty minimal.
Yeah, so mash regimen, I've yet to do the step mashing process here at Craft Coast. Obviously, we had a beautiful Mueller 5-vessel system at Pizza Port where we could, employ any of those techniques. But here it's all single infusion. Oscura has a little bit higher mash rest degree than Agua Baja to help enhance that little bit higher terminal gravity. All the dark malt, specialty malt gets milled and put on top of the grist at Vorlauf. None of it goes into the mash process itself. Trying to keep those malt astringencies, the harsh flavors, the edges out of the mash, and just getting the color and a little bit of that chocolate roast to pull through in the final product. And it's really cool to see perfectly clear first runnings and pale first runnings, and then by mid lauter, it's jet black, as dark black as can be. And then when the beer comes out, it's this really nice, I would say, right in the border of dark brown and black, but you could see straight through the ruby hues on the edges. And I think putting the dark malts on top has really made that beer rounded off and softer and easier to palate, while still achieving exactly what we're going for, is a little more flavor, a little more color.
Right.
So
are there certain dark malts that you lean on for this that are going to provide that color and the right kind of flavor without like adding too much acidity, too much astringency, or too much roast?
Yeah. It's the best kept secret in craft beers. How do you get color without all of those things? And there's a product called Cinnamar.
Yeah, yes, there is.
that we don't use. So
all right.
I'll give you that much information. Nah, if you know me, you probably know what's in it. But I think it's super important. I've even started doing that on all of our stouts and dark beers. Brown ale, the Birria Brown. None of the dark malt ever goes into the mash. It goes on top. And we had to do that out of necessity at Pizza Port when we started brewing bacon and eggs on the big brew house. That macro lager, louder ton vessel just was not keen for those sticky dark malts to go into the mash process. We would have to transfer it over from the mixer to the lauter, and it was just a nightmare. So we started throwing all the specialty malt on top. We're achieving our color. We're getting a touch of the flavor, and we're going to add coffee later anyways. So
it's going to boost
we're going to get the roast anyways. So I took those same ideas and just applied them to lighter styles. And I think one of the things I dislike most about beer in general is astringency and harshness on styles where it's not supposed to be there. I think I almost struggle with certain styles because they're a little too harsh and robust. And you drink Negro Modelo, it's not nearly as dark as Oscura, but it's so easy to drink. So to try and mimic that, I felt is super important. And that's where that mash regimen really comes into play. And then on top of that, we have two completely different styles of brew house. The original in Oceanside's direct fire. So we're getting a lot more malt effect in the boil just naturally. Right. So I think that beer definitely carried a lot more flavor at that time, and more color. We still water it back to try and soften it up around the edges, But once we started brewing it over here in San Marcos, like just that steam jacket on the kettle is so much softer, and that beer is, it just drinks so nice now. Not that it didn't before. It's just got a different overall character while keeping the same principles that it was created on. So it's really cool. Oh, and also the RO water thing over here helps.
So the original brewery in Oceanside does not have an RO system.
No RO, yeah.
But as you acquired this location, it did have an RO system in place, and that's kind of expanded some of your creativity over here.
For sure, and it's helped with the perceived bitterness factor, especially when we're talking lager style on all these delicate North American style lagers. Perceived bitterness is super important, and could never, process that out of Oceanside. We just didn't have the equipment, and I love the beers. They're amazing, and everything that's brewed over there, I drink consistently, but knowing that those factors existed, you could now use your newly acquired equipment to hopefully enhance your beer. And I think it took some getting used to, something that I had never experienced before. I had to reach out to multiple people, get some advice, how to use water modifiers, chlorides, and gypsums. It was a foreign language to me.
Right.
I'm an awful mathematician and scientist. I am more of a creative historian, kind of that kind of mind. That's where my brain goes. So, I had to reach out for help and learn how to do this RO thing and kept it as elementary as possible.
Right.
It's a 50-50 blend of RO water and carbon filtered water. Chuck in a little bit of calcium chloride, and that's it. I can't go any further than that. And hopefully our water never changes that drastically, or else I'd be in trouble again. And I'd have to reinvent the wheel.
Sure. Well, let's talk about fermentation. You use your yeast choices are maybe a little different than some others here in the craft world, and we can talk about that in the lager sense for both Agua Baja and Oscura. Since these are such similar kinds of things, I want to talk about that. But we've got some empty glasses here, and I'm starting to feel a little bit hungry, so maybe we also need to get some tacos. We can make some of that happen and continue this conversation in a second. But first, for over 50 years, Prairie Malt has been producing high extract malts forged from the fertile soils of Saskatchewan. As proud members of Bort Malt, one of the largest malt companies in the world with 27 malt plants in 16 countries, their North American malts are complemented by a wide variety of base and specialty imported malts from around the globe. This year, Prairie Malts is partnering with Roadhouse Brewing Company and Melvin Brewing Company to pour an unforgettable lineup of beers at their shared booth at this year's Great American Beer Festival in Denver from October 9th to 11th. So stop by the booth, sample some award-winning beers produced with excellent malts, and learn more about why malt from bigger is better at prairiemalt.com. And Breese Malting has been involved in the craft brewing community ever since it was established in the 1980s. Today, Breese offers the largest product line of specialty malt and is continuing to innovate. New malts include Heritage Gold, an English-style ale malt with complex bread character, and Lighthouse Munich, which has the full body of a Munich malt but minimal impact on color. All Breese malts are produced in the U.S., so you can count on a reliable supply chain. Barley is sourced from 300 growers in the Bighorn Basin of Wyoming and Montana. Malt is the backbone of beer. Check out why so many craft brewers trust Breese for their specialty malt at brewingwithbreese.com. All right, we are back. We've got some excellent tacos in front of us and have downed a couple and some fresh beers. Blake, these tacos, they are transcendent, and I'm sweating as I should be because there was some heat there. And I absolutely need another sip of beer because, obviously for obvious reasons. But no, this kind of scratch approach to everything, everything, absolutely stunningly delicious.
I have no involvement in the tacos other than I eat a shitload of them. So whatever they're doing over there is no.
No, you've got some good.
They're killing it.
You've got some
great,
great staff on that side, and have been able to pull in some phenomenal local taco makers to kind of drive the program there. And but man, like that is just some spectacular stuff. I can understand why this craft brew pub making tacos and beer leads with the tacos, because that definitely pulls people in.
Yeah, I mean it's really cool to have. It's really special, and I'm glad that that my partners and I were able to make that happen, and it needed to happen.
For sure. Okay, well, we're going to finish up this podcast, and then I'm going to see if I can stomach any more tacos, because those were amazing. And and there's some spicy carrots on the menu right now. I got to try some spicy carrots.
Those will knock the sweat beads out of your forehead right there more than anything else on the menu.
I'm here for it. You haven't crushed me with heat yet. It's all been good kind of heat so far. But I need a reason to drink yet another Mexican lager. We're here, or another XPA for that matter. But we were talking about fermentation. Let's talk about fermentation, especially in this lager space. You're a dry yeast fanatic.
Shocker to the world. Here we go. The craft beer community could tar and feather me all they want. This dry yeast thing,
the results speak for themselves,
right? Yeah, and it's funny because a couple guys, good friends, I'm not going to mention names, when we were all sitting there during the GABF awards ceremony, and Fermentus does their sponsorship spiel. These guys are like, "Look at these idiots," and I'm like, I'm one of those idiots, like, and then we win a gold for a lager made with dry yeast. But I'm not going to go into that. No, I love dry yeast.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. And he'll know who he is if he listens to this. I think the dry yeast thing really came to light. I guess it just worked out. There's a guy in San Diego. His name's Doug Hasker. Legendary, just lager brewer, Gordon Biersch, and now they do Puesto. He really is the proponent for dry yeast, and I was like, hey, if he's doing it and he's well known and well received in the lager field, what he's doing is right. And so
he's using, from what I understand, more than just dry 3470. He's branched out.
Yeah. I wanted to keep things simple, and when we took that initial approach of we're not going to brew the same thing twice, that was yeast strain dependent. So how do I do that without blowing the bank? But within that, I found this consistency and quality that I wasn't sure I was ready for or prepared for, and 3470 is dry from Fermentus, is the house lager strain at Craft Coast. It's the only lager strain. Early on, I tried to experiment S23.
S23, sure.
Which I think is what Doug goes
that's
for.
Doug's thing, yeah.
But I like 3470. I like the consistency, the predictability. If I start my original gravity here, I'll achieve terminal gravity here. It does that so well. If you could mitigate this sulfur, you're left with a really nice beer. So
tell me more about that. What do you do to mitigate sulfur production in 3470? Because there are some styles where that sulfur, is a welcome thing. If you're making a pilsner, like, you want a lot of that sulfur character. But
right.
If you're making Mexican lager, you definitely want to kind of pull that down.
Yeah, you want to suppress it. So I think one thing that, one technique that I really enjoy and works, in a weird way, is we use copper in the kettle, and that'll help drive some of those precursors and some of that out. And then
how do you use it in the kettle? You've got to insert the
copper pipe. Yeah, we have a copper pipe that we just drop down in towards the end of boil, and we leave it in there until we're done knocking out. So that's for the hot side. And then when it comes down to fermentation, I've really found that I'm very sensitive to sulfur, and I don't necessarily like it. And that's why I don't want anyone to freak out over this statement. I'm not the biggest European lager drinker because it's sulfur heavy. Except for everyone at Bierstadt, that you guys are good. But the sulfur thing is super sensitive. We don't have that in American style lager. We don't have that in Mexican lager. I love the fermentation cleanliness and characteristics of 3470 minus the sulfur in those beers. So copper in the kettle on the hot side, and then we'll just let that blow off stay open for as long as we can until we pull samples and say, hey, it's time to cap the tank. Enough of those have blown off. That could go late, it's day 10, 12, 13, 14. Even if you're getting one bubble every 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something is escaping there. And in these really light lagers, we're talking 4.5%, 5% for the dark Mexican lager. The sulfur component is super, super prominent if you don't let it naturally escape. We're not going to sit there for 9 weeks and let that lager out per se, because it just doesn't make sense. So I actually almost kind of do the opposite of what I think a lot of other guys that I've heard lager technique wise, where it's like, hey, we want to cap down, we want to conserve some of those head forming proteins and all of this, but then you're trapped with sulfur that you have to let lager out. I just go the opposite way. I'm going to leave it open for as long as possible. I want all of those flavors to push out, and then we'll cap it. We'll get it off yeast. We'll start to slowly crash the beer down and try and promote a good flock out, so that when we're at our transfer time or filter time, the beer coming out is nice and clear, and we're happy with the final result, and we don't have to buffer it out.
It's a light polishing instead of a deep filtering at that point.
Right. Again, equipment necessities are part of that process. We can only work with what we have to work with. We don't have a traditional German lager brew house or horizontal tanks. We're brewing it the American craft brew way, and so you have to take a little bit of maybe unorthodox approach, which I'm totally fine with. And for us, it's worked. I really like the end results. And luckily enough, beer judges have also liked the end results. And so we've stuck with that technique. And I think, starting with a dry yeast process and harvesting generation over generation, it just gets easier to use and more predictable. And that came with a little bit of R&D and figuring out on our end, but I'm stoked with where we're at.
How do you maintain the health of that yeast for deeper generations, and how far down do you go with some of these generations?
Nutrient, I think, super important. Those bricks are already packed full of nutrient.
Right.
They're packed full of a ton of extra cells, so you're getting a really healthy pitch Gen 1. Generation over generation, it harvests really well. It's nice and fluffy. It comes down and flocks out fairly quick to give you a good harvest within, 5 or 7 days. Little bit of zinc always goes a long way, just to help with that generational health. And honestly, just moving it over here to San Marcos, all the lagers are brewed here now, 100% of them. Cold liquor tank, RO system, steam jackets. It's just way more keen for a good lager. And I really loved the lager before, but now it's, when you think about your overall vision of when you create a recipe to the way it tastes, your first sip, I think we're closer to that now than we were before. And because of all those factors that I was just saying, and then just, it's easy to harvest. We're taking it from one tank, cone to cone, straight into the next tank. And maybe anywhere from, 4 to 6 gens would probably be my cutoff point. It's all out of necessity at this point. I don't go much more than that because you're working with a product that,
a fresh brick is not that crazy.
It's not that expensive. So I don't feel the need that I have to really, and sometimes you're just in that pinch point where I can only use one gin and I got to get rid of it, but I don't need to shed a tear because I just spent all this money on shipping and handling and all this. So that's essentially why it all started from the start, because it was a lot of Gen 1 down the drain. Gen 1, maybe try and find a buddy who wanted the Gen 2 and then go away, you know. And then it just turned into this thing where this yeast is actually really, really consistent and provides a really, really good fermentation character in the beer that's not anything like the perception of what I was told when I was a very early brewer.
Sure.
You know, when dry yeast there was a no-go. You know, it was an absolute, you don't do that.
Especially down here in San Diego, liquid yeast is definitely king.
It's king
in this county, for sure. Now, does that, do you use that 3470 also in some of your ales, or do you,
Yeah, definitely. Again, it comes.
It's so hot right now using those
who would have thought? Hot lager, literally. It's so hot.
Hot lager, cold ale. I mean,
whatever you want to call it. Dialect changes as you travel regionally. No, if it's available and a West Coast IPA is on the docket to be brewed next, and we might not have any ale yeast, we'll brew it and we'll treat it as ale yeast. And guess what? It performs. And I think there's other breweries across this country that can say that is a house, house technique that's not going anywhere.
You just go both ways. Yeah. That same IPA could just be made with either one, and both of them will work, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. And that is the beauty of being a brew pub, is the beer is allowed to change. It is never set in stone. The lagers will never change. Those are the beers. But hey, if I need to brew this West Coast IPA this turn, and I can only do it with lager yeast, well, we're going to see what we can do and see if the results yield maybe better, or we'll go back to what we were doing. And it's created new beers. And so, yeah, we do like brewing cold IPA. They sell really well in our climate of sunshine.
Yeah, just having the word cold in something is going to help sell it, isn't it?
Yeah. Once it hits your lips, you're getting something a little more crispy.
We're going streaking.
Yeah. So it's actually fun. Sure. And there's certain recipes that have just kind of gained these cult followings because it is that. And we brew this one beer. It's kind of a sidetrack note, but it's called Tortilla, and cold IPA, all citrus cryo, and then there's like 300 or 400 fresh corn tortillas in the mash. And so you get this like super citrusy corn tortilla zing. And it just makes this really cool beer. It's like maybe a once a year beer type thing, but it's fun. We can literally throw a ton of corn into the mash, and it just creates a different dynamic for West Coast IPA. And,
I didn't realize you're such a pastry bro, throwing stuff into your mash like that.
You don't want to know what else gets thrown into the mash. Again, I'm trying to gain some respect.
Why tortillas instead of corn on that? I'm curious.
Well, it's both. Okay. It's both. Pilsner malt with flake corn, and then to just add another degree of flavor, you throw those raw corn tortillas in there, and it's really cool. You 100%
from
taste
scratch made tortillas here from your kitchen.
Right.
Man. All right.
Yeah. Haven't gotten to the cilantro yet. I know people who have attempted, and I haven't got there, but the masa for sure.
Interesting. With Citra and Citra Cryo. All right. I want to talk about XPA, because obviously you've had some success with XPA, and there, for a moment there earlier this year, we thought that there was going to be some XPA kind of, thing going on. Obviously we've had great XPA from, Scotty at Balter, now ex-Balter, obviously. And, interesting to like Firestone Walker picked up on the XPA thing, kind of pushed out some, earlier this year. Talk to me about your approach to XPA and, what, and of course I've had XPA that kind of runs the spectrum, right? There's some idea that, extra pale ale, as it's been brewed in this kind of Southern Hemisphere context in Australia, should have that kind of Southern Hemisphere hop character, maybe like stronger thiol, kind of whatnot. When I tasted yours earlier, as we were talking on the podcast, like I definitely did not get the same kind of strong thiol note that I may have gotten in some other XPAs. Let's talk about it from a creative perspective. What was your inspiration behind that? And then how'd you go about designing a recipe for it?
It's good that you mentioned Scotty from Balter. Scotty Hargrave is a great friend, and he is the maestro of the XPA movement. And I think anyone else who brews them would also say the same. Certainly Firestone and, me and Burgeon, all of us. We love Scotty.
When you track back the inspiration, it goes back to Scotty.
We love Scotty. And
we judged a couple of years ago in the final table of Alpha King, and he's a character, and what a thoughtful brewer.
Oh, he's a very good friend and a very good mentor, and the amount of knowledge he has for just flavor and perception and all of these things, he's so good at dialing that in. And so I idolized his XPA. We became friends years ago when I worked at Pizza Port, and just stayed in contact ever since. It's a guy that I talk to him a couple times a week, if not more. And his IPA was the beer for me. Like when I tasted it for the first time, I'm a hoppy beer drinker. I love to drink West Coast IPA. I love hops. I don't want to get bashed for this, but I was never the brewer that's like, I need lager. I'm so burnt out on everything. Like I want to drink hoppy beer. And then I had this XPA thing that was 5%, but tasted like the sickest West Coast IPA ever. That got my gears turning. I'm like, that might be my beer. It just spoke to me. So I set out to brew Craft Coast again. I set my mind open, and I'm like, how can I gear this up and taste it and then put out the final product? Brewed several renditions, and then finally landed on the one that we're brewing today, and the one that ended up getting the World Beer Cup back to back. And that's just what it is. But that took
back-to-back silver or bronze, and then silver,
bronze and silver.
24 and 25.
Right. And hopefully we could go up from there. That would be super cool. But there's a brewery called Breakside that keeps standing in the way of everybody all the time.
Those guys.
Which, that beer is amazing. So, I mean, XPA was just one of those things that came from a brewer that I love and respect, and I wanted to make mine.
Sure.
And so I guess the final product ended up Strata, Crush, and Mosaic Heavy. I feel like those three hops there's no Southern Hemisphere character whatsoever. Like what you were mentioning earlier, I don't think that's not what...
Although we have to admit that there are some brewers out there, one of them in this very county, that have won in New Zealand IPA or pale ale with beers that did not have New Zealand hops in them. You can certainly, with enough Mosaic, mimic a character. There's also that one in Denver that's done or something similar.
Yeah, keeps doing that. Yeah, keeps doing that. Yeah, I mean, that's why Mosaic is such a beautiful hop, and that is my favorite hop. What you want it to do is what it's going to do. If you want it to be fruity, it'll be fruity. If you want it to be dank, it'll be dank. If you want it to be the gassiest thing that it's ever, it could do that. And so figuring out where it fits within those other three hops was kind of like the trial and error. And I know Scotty's does not use any Southern Hemisphere whatsoever.
Really?
Yeah. So
in Australia, they just don't use any Southern Hemisphere hops.
In that beer, no.
Huh, interesting.
That's the best kept international secret.
Well, the secret is safe with us.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well, now it's safe until anybody listens to it. But yeah, so
that's the awesome weird thing about this, right? You've got New Zealand lager, brewers making, lagers with, Rawaka and whatnot. You've got Australian brewers making XPA with Pacific Northwest hops. Like, the world is interesting, complex, and there are just no rules. There are certainly things that produce better results, and yet in the hand of a creative brewer, anything is possible with their system, their water, their ingredients, and the way they approach those.
Yep, that's what makes beer so great. Specifically craft beers. You could use your imagination, and you use your equipment at hand, your ingredients at hand, your water at hand to do an interpretation of all these international styles. Whether you're aiming to be the most spot on technical to style, or you just like the idea of trying to do that, I think that's what makes craft beer so great. And Scotty, when you're talking to him about beer, and if you've ever heard anything he says, he's just got such a good way to describe it. And beyond that, if you've ever rubbed hops with him in Yakima, you'll know, like, he's looking for specific flavors, and he has brought that to Australia, and that's what made craft beer and his craft beer so great. And there's a lot to learn from that. And that's what I love about being friends with people like that, is you could sit back and just kind of be a sponge at that time. And it's like, oh, that's why that beer is so good. I just listened to you talk to this guy about Citra for 35 minutes, and you could probably keep going, but you got distracted because you need to drink another beer.
Sure,
you know what
sure.
I mean? So
no, but that kind of, I know what you're saying. That interaction between brewer and grower, and like that conversation, and brewers being able to influence the way that the agriculture then progresses, the way that farmers harvest and process their like it's a beautiful thing, and having that kind of intention that goes back to brewers with a vision for how to do that. It is a very special thing. There's not necessarily that kind of close connection is this distinguishing factor amongst great craft beer today. And we'll have more conversation around that. But I want to talk about the creative expression in XPA, and how you think about what the flavor should be, and how you then build both malt and hops in order to kind of pull off that idea of what the beer should be.
Yeah, so it all starts with a very simple yet effective grist, pilsner and wheat, and a combination of any pilsner
malt in your ales. Yeah,
and any wheat could go kind of whatever direction you want. But in our case, a heavy load of 100% pilsner. There's no 2-row in ours at all. We get enough body from Wireman pale wheat, and we get enough character from that we don't need to add any 2-row. And that just builds this foundation for something that can be super dry and super neutral. Then you build the hops on top of that. And so it's this layering of hops throughout the boil from the start to the finish. But you really just touch it. You don't go all in. And then when you need your aroma and flavor, that's when you really hit it heavy. And so figuring out these recipes, a couple of them were too bitter. A couple of them were over hopped, just there was too much hop material got in the way. It's supposed to be a perfect harmony of drinkability and hop aroma and flavor. Like, that is what XPA is. And there's been a lot of question and comment, and there's been some articles out of what XPA actually is. And I think the main thing that people can agree on is they're insanely drinkable. It's usually packed into like very low ABV, but you don't cheap the drinker on flavor. Like, you're giving them every single bit of flavor that you can put into a 5% or less beer. And so I think when I was trying to create the idea of XPA, I'm like, I just want it to be like Balters. It's tropical, it's dry, it's crisp, it's aromatic, it's flavorful, but every time you get towards the end of the can, you're looking to grab another one. And I think that is super important across all styles for me, but it particularly in XPA, it's like, if you're already thinking about the next one you're going to drink, then you've nailed that style while you're drinking one. Sure. If you're thinking about the next opening up another one after, you've completed exactly what that style is. And then you could dive into all different hop characters, and whether it's Southern Hemi or whether it's all Pacific Northwest or Oregon or a blend of all of it, as long as the final achievement is I'm going to drink a couple of these things and it smells and tastes really fucking good and doesn't blow my palate out, you've made the beer. That's what the style is.
Kind of sounds like West Coast pills to me as well. Interesting crossovers, especially given the way that some of these are fermented and everything else. But let's not get into that. Let's pivot and let's talk about West Coast IPA. Obviously, we're in San Diego. I can't not talk about West Coast IPA while we're here. San Diego is a spiritual locus of West Coast IPA, or San Diego style IPA, as some people call it. There are some regional differences, I think, between the way it's brewed down here in San Diego and say Portland, Oregon, or say East Bay. There's definitely some differences.
Why?
There.
Because they do it better than us.
I'm making no judgment on that, or say, Denver, Colorado, for that matter, or Erie and Lafayette, Colorado.
As Jake would say, we're better at West Coast IPA than the inventors of West Coast IPA.
Blake, that's just the way that all of these things go, right? Yeah. You put something out in the world, other creative people respond to it with their own takes, and the entire thing develops from there. And so you can put something out in the world, like think about the originators of New England hazy IPA. I've had great hazy IPAs in Poland. I've had great hazy IPAs in New Zealand. Brewers across the world are making this, and right. just because it came about as a result of brewers in one region doesn't mean that they own it forever. My God, how many American brewers are making pilsner these days? It doesn't mean that it's anyhow less relevant here. It just means that it has some roots in some place, and San Diego can be proud of that because San Diego has contributed a lot to this beer style that is so compelling out there in the world. So you grew up in this style. You've done it for from the Pizza Port days to now here at Craft Coast. As you think about this modern iteration of where West Coast IPA is now, what does that mean to you today in 2025?
To me, it all starts with the hops, and I also like to go beyond that of which hop am I going to be featuring here, and how can I build a beer around it? That comes down to bitterness. That comes down to what expression that hop is going to give. It comes down to a malt profile of some kind. It needs to be dry. It needs to be aromatic. It needs to be highly flavorful. Bitterness needs to be in balance at some point. If you push the ABV to the upper limits, then go ahead and give it some more bitterness. But to me, I love building West Coast IPA. It
starts with the hops.
A singular hop. And
so then what does that mean? What hop would you start with? And obviously, again, you have multiple expressions here, but start with a hop for me, and then talk me through your creative process around that.
So for us, our house IPA is a beer called Locomotion. It's a West Coast IPA, 100% Mosaic, which we're not the only people doing that. And I could tell you the exact people who are doing it well and why I like to do that. But to me, that hop is so complex, and which way you use it, it will give you a different expression of itself. So you can make a Mosaic single hop beer that all of a sudden tastes like it has 4 different hops in it. And so
how do you do that? Do you do that through multiple selections? Do you do that through manipulating some of the other characteristics of the beer itself?
Yeah. So for us, since we're a small brewery, our selection is our one lot of T90 in our one lot of cryo. For me, it's more of the variable and the place where it gets put into the beer is what's going to express something different. So throughout the boil, Mosaic works beautifully. It works great as a bittering hop. It works great as a first wort hop. It works great as a whirlpool hop. Depending on how you dry hop it, time, temperature, what day into fermentation, how late after fermentation, will give you all of these expressions. And so you
tell me more about that. Like, what does that mean? Obviously with West Coast IPA, you're probably not dry hopping during active fermentation, but
I think for some, it certainly fits because it adds that layer of flavor and aroma depth that you need. And it doesn't necessarily throw the beer out of style because you're going to get those characters back later, or you already got them in your boil, in your whirlpool. So I love doing a touch in the active ferment, especially stuff that's super dank. Love going active ferment with that to help drive off some of those dank precursors. And then you're left with this really saturated fruit.
When you do it during active fermentation, like when would you do it? Towards the, is there a couple of degrees Plato before terminal, or?
I mean, honestly, at this point for me, because I'm still sticking true to that brew pub style, it is varietal dependent at this point. Every beer has its own set of technique, but overall, I would say try and harvest the yeast first. So I need it to be either day 5, day 7. It all depends. Like if I'm needing that yeast, I have no choice but to wait for that active firm dry hop. But if I'm killing,
is this a 3470 fermentation, or is this
this USO5? USO5 is house ale here. Typically XPA will start the USO5 generation and life cycle, and then we'll go West Coast IPA until we could end up at triple IPA, where it's got a huge either knockout or early firm dry hop, and that's when the yeast is done.
Right.
So I think each beer, I try and make our brew schedule to allow for the yeast to have a generational life cycle. And then when we want to end it, that's when we'll try something super experimental, creative. We'll knock out on hops. We'll add them, straight to the fermenter while we're knocking out. And we're obviously not able to or wanting to repitch that yeast. So we end up with a completely new flavor profile. And some of our beers started that way, and then we were able to find we could get a similar character by even waiting farther into fermentation, because for that particular batch, we needed to harvest yeast off of it. But I'm still trying to make the same exact beer, and you learn something new. So I think certain varieties are amazing at that early active, and then your more classic tried and true where you know what you're going to get rid of all the yeast, maybe even drop the temperature a bit so that you could promote all of that to get out so that you're not rousing it up. So each beer is that way by design. And so our beers that we consider core are a little bit more structured, and we have a set fermentation and cellaring schedule, cold side schedule. But for brand new recipes and trying to learn something new, all bets are off, and I love new hop varieties that come out or new products. I think the knockout dry hop, like day 0, whatever people want to call it, is the most prime time to learn what a new hop is going to do for you. Throw it in there. Let fermentation blow off all of the byproducts that you're not looking for, and discover the true heart of that hop. And some work and some don't. But like I was saying way earlier, I don't remember how much earlier, but that's how we figured out 586. And now it's Crush, and that hop is the featured hop in our core West Coast IPA, Old West, and XPA. And it's used in the same application now.
So when you knock out hop, what does that mean for you? Are you then you're using this in like cryo or T90 form? Are you using this in like flowable liquid form, like that other brewery down here in San Diego of knocking out some hot wort onto some flowable hops.
Right.
What does that process look like for you?
So those are two different processes for pellet hops, whether it's T90 or cryo. While we're knocking out, we're literally going up to the top of the tank.
Yeah.
Opening it up while we have a collection of wort in there and throwing pellets straight in.
Post chiller, then going in at your normal knockout temperature.
This is straight into the top of the fermenter. And we do that often. Like I said, if it's a gen of yeast that we're done with and we no longer need it, I would say 99% of the time that technique is being used.
Interesting.
On the other side of that, when it comes down to flowable, I saw this really cool thing at my friend's brewery, Ogopogo. They added this cool little vessel in line, post whirlpool pre-heat X, that you kind of poured the flowable into and then just pushed wort through. And they would, like, when they were using that, they would put it into the brew house. When they weren't, they would take it out. So I went back, had our welder come in and put in a little flowable vessel that it comes out of the kettle straight through that pre-heat X. Your contact time with hot wort to flowable to heat X was about 4 foot of process piping. And so you're getting it into solution and you're immediately cooling it down and locking it. And then you have no problem with harvesting. You have no problem with product loss, it clinging to the trube, it clinging to your stainless.
You've got really like high flow going through that.
Straight through it.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Like you could physically see it.
This is the hottest new item for brew houses in 2025. Huh?
Yeah.
Do you have?
I hold the trademark. No, I'm.
Do you hold your? Do you have a flowable, port or a flowable? Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be the new thing. Hey. Yeah. Well, Kelsey.
We were all about like tangential whirlpool ports for a little while, and now like, do you have your inline flowable?
It's an inline flowable port. Yeah. I mean, Kelsey certainly has shown amazing success with his hot barrel.
Sure.
And you could taste it in those beers. And I think one thing that I love about our little technique is that our equipment can't do the hot barrel. We're not going to be able to chill that wort down fast enough after we start putting cold wort in to pitch yeast and do what we want. So Ogopogo kind of showed us the way. I came over, showed our welder what I wanted, and now that's just how we do. Every hazy that we make is flowable only on the hot side. There are no pellets of any kind. And then heavily dry hopped on the cold side. And that's just, I love that technique, and it works. And it
all flowable hot side for hazy IPA.
That's it. There's no T90s that exist or cryos.
And then, for that, since you've got this port, are you doing anything in the whirlpool, or is it all going through this kind of?
In the case of West Coast IPA, if it has flowable, that is our whirlpool addition.
Sure.
An amazing benefit out of those flowables, and which is why I love the new product. You're getting such a nice hot side yield into your fermenter. Like you're benefiting in multiple ways.
Oh yeah.
And I think when
just cleaning your kettle after that kind of thing is a piece of cake.
It's gone into the wort. It's already gone. And before we started doing that, we were pouring Dynaboost or at the time, I think it was called 702. It was a trial product.
Right.
And it would just cling to the trube pile. It'd cling to the stainless. It was a mess. Your cleaning cycles would be super dirty and sticky afterwards. And then it's like, all right, put this little thing in line, push your hot wort through it. It dissolves in, and then you cool it down and it locks in. And now you're left with these flavors that are
and that kind of speed is incredible, right? Because now, there is no time for isomerization. The amount of time that those are actually encountering heat, like you say, is 4 feet of process pipe before they then get chilled. And so, you're probably significantly lowering bitterness contribution from those kinds of flowables with that kind of structure.
Yeah. So you're getting the best. In my opinion, everyone is entitled to their own, but in mine, you're getting the best use of that product. You're getting pure aromatic and flavor contribution, and you're avoiding any extra bitterness uptake, because I think the 1 kilo jug of Dynaboost is equivalent to 22 pounds of T90. I would never put 22 pounds of T90 into a whirlpool. It would fuck a lot of things up. But a 1 kilo jug that goes straight into solution, and I get all that flavor benefit, and I still keep my yield, so I'm getting extra finished beer on the back end. It all ends up paying for itself. You get a little bit more legs on your beer because you're not oxidizing hop compounds. It's literally, it's beneficial all the way around. And I think I'm very thankful that collab that we did up there, because it opened my eyes to a new technique. And since then, that has now been the technique that's being carried on and given to people and that's why collabs are so amazing. You always learn something, and then you might take it to the next level, and now you can teach somebody else that process. So West Coast IPA with the inline is awesome, because you're not giving yourself a huge trub pile. You're able to take more wort into the fermenter while enhancing these flavors and aromas and not affecting your yeast at all.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win. I think the only counterpoint to the flowable in terms of West Coast IPA, it's an oil. Like, you're working with oil. So if you don't achieve a super dry terminal gravity and a super lean mouthfeel, like, those oils will kind of trick your palate into thinking that the beer is a little more slick or a little sweeter than what it actually is on paper. And so that's kind of that's the game you play, what we're always working towards and figuring out is like, hey, this thing's super aromatic, but the mouthfeel might not be exactly what I want. So that's what it comes down to.
So then how does that then like play out then in your dry hopping regimen later on at the end of fermentation and post fermentation? You know, because you still, in order to build some depth of hop character there, you want some green matter in there. Like, you're not just using, flowables in this, even if all the hot side is flowable. How do you then find some of that balance on the back end?
One of the greatest parts is that the flavor and aroma is already in the beer, and now you could pull a sample and analyze what's missing here. What am I trying to gain? What is the overall idea behind the beer? And so you're already starting with a nice platform of flavor and aroma. And if you want to hit it a little more tropical, you know which way you can go with it. If it needs to be more dank, you know which way you could go with it, because you might already have this super fruity, complex thing, and you don't need more fruit from your hops. Now you need to balance the dimension. And so so you're thinking about this like a chef, right? You're tasting your dish now, through this, and you're like, well, now I need a little bit of this and need to add a little more, to kind of move it to this direction. And you can then spec, not based on like some broader idea of what it's going to be, but now directly responding to where it is now in its current state. Right. You're pinpointing flavors that are needed and desired also. When you write a recipe, any brewer writes a recipe, I would like to think that you're thinking about what the final product tastes and feels and smells like. And so when you add in these early hop additions, whether it's a knockout dry hop, a Dyna, or a flowable inline, you know what your main achievement is at the back end. And so you're just left with this really nice platform to build on. And sometimes you might be able to, you think you're going to need this huge dry hop load, and you don't, because your beer is already locked in. And those flavors are soluble, like they're saturated. They don't off gas. They don't decay over time. They don't oxidize. Like it's there for the lifespan of the beer. So hey, I got this really rich Mosaic oily character. I might not need the Mosaic anymore. I could now focus on whatever hop B and C are. And that really made the difference in our hazy IPA. Shoots Mahalo. It used to be a Mosaic up front, Sabro, Eldorado, Mosaic later, to get this kind of like tiki tropical vibe. Now it's Sabro flowable, Mosaic, Cryo, El Dorado, and the secondary dry hop. And it's the same character achieved a completely backwards way. And it's really cool. Like, you have to kind of play with it. But if you're even thinking from the brew pub perspective, you might be thinking, oh yeah, that's possible just because you're a pub. You don't have to worry about cogs or anything. But I think about beer always from a production standpoint, because that's where my core is built on. I'm getting extra liquid out of my back end because I pulled a huge hot side yield over into my fermenter. And so I don't have to worry about certain losses of trub and other things. I can really focus on achieving the hop character that I really want. And I think that's one of the most fun things. And big proponent on always trying a new hop product available. And I'm not, I'll never shy away from, if something comes up, I would love to try it, type thing.
Sure. Well, we've been talking for a while now. We've been eating some tacos. We've been drinking lager. We've been drinking pale ale. We've been drinking IPA. There's been a few beers over the course of this podcast. We should bring this to a close, but I do want to, just talk about the broader subject of what you feel leads to the same kind of culture of excellence. Now, again, you cut your teeth in a, graduate school for brewers at Pizza Port. You learned many lessons there that you've translated into the way that you run a brew house now, run multiple brew houses now at Craft Coast. What are some of the key identifying factors of excellence that you find? One that you identified in the feature story is cleanliness. You have open brew houses that are visible from your tap rooms. You have a deep focus on making sure that everything is clean, orderly, and you have a transparency that supports that kind of openness. From there and beyond, are there other factors that you consider that drive this kind of, that lead to this kind of award-winning beer and this idea of excellence that you produce here?
I guess the main thing is open dialogue within your team and within your staff, constantly trying to be better. Even if something is already considered great and has achieved excellence, you're constantly trying to make one up yourself. And then I might have a buddy who beats me, and now I need to get back to work because I thought I was in the right spot. So cleanliness, organization, structure, maintenance, preventative maintenance, like all of those things are super important, but having that open dialogue where everyone on the team is in the same mindset, like the whole goal at the end of it, the reason we're brewers is to make beer taste the best so people want to buy it and drink it. And I'll never forget that as the standing principle, because I could make the sickest beer ever that I think is cool, but nobody will drink it. So you try and think about, who am I appealing to and why am I doing it? And beyond that, I'm going to take this thing to competitions and I want it to win because I'm a competitive guy. But our team loves it and enjoys it and believes in it. And our customers love it, enjoy it, and believe in it. And that's the only way we could keep going. People have to like it and enjoy it. And that is our core value. Our tacos are the same way. They are dialed in. So the beer needs to be dialed in. You can't have an off-balanced kind of approach. And so I think all of our team is under the same thing. We're striving for excellence at all times. Batch over batch, taco over taco, whatever.
Absolutely beautiful. And I love that kind of, we're going to be the best at the tacos. We're going to be the best at the beer. If people find the beer through the tacos, then my goodness, how amazing that is. If they find the tacos through the beer because they're into beer and they're searching out for that award-winning beer, then amazing. Also, we're going to take them from both perspectives, but everything that we do is going to be the best that it can possibly be.
And you're going to have a really good time while doing it. Like, you can take yourself seriously and you could take the product seriously, but have a blast while doing it. Laugh, make fun of each other, enjoy it. Like, you need to enjoy every minute of it because, you know, we're lucky to be in an industry like this where it's about liquid and things that people enjoy. I can't take myself super seriously. It's beer, but also I'm going to try and make good beer. And if you ask anyone that knows me, like I like to laugh. I'm loud, obnoxious, and that's all part of it. So
deadly serious on the brewing side and not serious at all once the brewing is done and you're eating some tacos and drinking some beer. That's a great place to bring it to a close because it sounds, you know, it's mid-afternoon at this point. Kind of feels like we should drink some more beer, have some more fun, and make some more stories and memories. Now, G&D Chiller's Elite 290 Series chiller uses propane as a natural refrigerant with extremely low global warming potential. Berkeley yeast bioengineers ordinary strains to make them extraordinary. Whether trending flavor additions or nostalgic favorites, the next best thing is around the corner at Old Orchard. Release your creativity with the magic of pure, uncut Oregon hops from Indy. Extra Tough has been making rugged and reliable boots for 75 years. Reach out to Canoe Wild Rice and try brewing with their unique roasted grain. Try Prairie's lineup at the Roadhouse and Melvin booth at GABF this October. And try new Heritage Golden Lighthouse Munich malts from Breeze. If you've enjoyed this episode, go to beerandbrewing.com. Click on the subscribe button. If you're a professional brewer out there, grab one of those industry all-access subscriptions. Get our Brewing Industry Guide magazine and read the cover story on Craft Coast in the next issue, authored by Joe Stang. It's an excellent story and also sheds more light, even more light on Craft Coast. And I don't know, Blake, maybe we'll pin you down and get a recipe out there for all access subscribers as well. Although you're so cagey on some of these things. So cagey on some of these things.
Lies.
Maybe we'll get a homebrew recipe out.
Give me a couple beers and then we'll talk recipes for the rest of the...
I'm up for the challenge. Let's do that. I'm going to get a commitment when we're done here. Anyway, go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button. Blake, if people want to learn more about Craft Coast, where can they find you here in the real world? In San Marcos and Oceanside, where they can come grab some tacos and beer or learn more about you out there on the digital space.
Yep. Instagram is always the best spot for updates and content. And we honestly just want everybody to come into our spot, come into Oceanside, come into San Marcos. Each offers something a little different. Same environment, same good tacos, same beer, but you could be by the beach or you could not be by the beach. It's up to you.
I think, again, you're underselling it. It's not good tacos. They're fucking great tacos. And the beer is equally great. Amazing getting up here. So good to talk with you about brewing. Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This podcast has been brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those who love to make and drink great beer. To learn more or to subscribe, visit beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.